The land we now call Iran has a history that stretches back thousands of years. Historically, its inhabitants were followers of Zoroastrianism or Parsi, and hence was referred as Persia. This name came from one region, Pars, but the country itself has always been home to many different peoples. The idea of Iran, or the land of the Aryans, is an ancient one, deeply rooted in the traditions of its inhabitants. Long before the great empires rose, civilizations like the Elamites in the southwest had already built complex cities and developed unique writing systems. This early history laid the groundwork for the powerful states that would later emerge and shape the destiny of the entire region for centuries to come. The first great Iranian empire was created by the Medes, who united various tribes from their mountain stronghold in the Zagros. They were soon overshadowed by their relatives, the Persians, led by Cyrus the Great. Cyrus founded the Achaemenid Empire around 550 BC, an empire celebrated for its vast size and its relatively tolerant rule over conquered peoples. This empire was a mosaic of cultures where Persians, Medes, Babylonians, and Egyptians lived under a single administration. Within this vast territory were the ancestors of today's Kurds and Baloch, living in the mountainous western frontiers and the arid eastern lands respectively, retaining much of their local autonomy. The Achaemenid Empire became a symbol of Persian power and prestige, connecting a vast area from India to Egypt. Its rulers, like Darius the Great, built magnificent cities such as Persepolis, and established a system of roads and governance that was remarkably efficient for its time. People from all corners of the empire contributed to its wealth and culture. The Kurds inhabiting the rugged Zagros mountains were known for their fierce independence and pastoral lifestyle, often serving as soldiers or living in semi-independent tribal confederations. Similarly, the Baloch people in the southeastern deserts maintained their own distinct traditions, largely untouched by the central government in faraway Persepolis. This period of Persian dominance came to an end with the conquests of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BC. The fall of the Achaemenids brought Hellenistic, or Greek, culture to Iran, creating a blend of Eastern and Western traditions. After Alexander's death, his generals established the Seleucid Empire, which ruled for a time before another native Iranian dynasty, the Parthians, rose to power. The Parthians, and later the Sasanians, restored Iranian rule and continued the legacy of empire. Throughout these centuries, the Kurdish and Baloch regions remained on the periphery, their unique identities shaped by their geography and their distinct social structures, often resisting full control by the central powers. The Sasanian Empire, a formidable rival to the Roman and later Byzantine empires, was the last great pre-Islamic Persian state. It was a time of significant cultural and religious development, with Zoroastrianism as the state religion. However, in the 7th century AD, a new force emerged from the Arabian Peninsula. Arab armies inspired by the new faith of Islam conquered the Sasanian Empire. This event marked a profound turning point in Iran's history. The arrival of Islam gradually transformed the country's religious and cultural landscape, introducing a new script, new laws, and new spiritual beliefs that would blend with ancient Persian traditions to create a unique Islamic civilization. The transition to Islam was not immediate or uniform across the vast territory of Iran. While major cities adopted the new faith relatively quickly, many rural and mountainous areas held on to their old beliefs for centuries. The Arabic language became the language of administration and high learning, but the Persian language, Farsi, survived and flourished, eventually re-emerging as a powerful literary language. This cultural resilience was a defining feature of the era. In the frontier regions of Kurdistan and Balochistan, the process of conversion was also gradual. Local tribal leaders often adopted Islam to maintain their authority, but the core cultures and languages of the Kurds and Baloch remained strong and distinct. As the central authority of the Arab Caliphate weakened, local Iranian dynasties began to rise again. Rulers like the Samanids and Buyids championed a revival of Persian culture, commissioning great works of literature, including the famous epic poem the Shahnameh, or Book of Kings. This period saw the fusion of Persian identity with Islamic faith, a synthesis that continues to define Iran today. For the people on the frontiers, this meant dealing with a new set of rulers. Kurdish dynasties, such as the Shaddadids and Hassanwahids, carved out their own principalities in the Zagros Mountains. navigating the complex politics between larger neighboring powers while fostering their own local culture. The arrival of Turkic and Mongol invaders from Central Asia in the 11th and 13th centuries brought further dramatic change. The Seljuk Turks established a vast empire and became great patrons of Persian art and architecture, but the Mongol invasion under Genghis Khan was devastating, leaving cities in ruins and causing immense loss of life. Yet, even from this destruction, Iran recovered. The Mongol rulers eventually adopted Persian culture and converted to Islam, continuing the pattern of conquerors being absorbed by the rich civilization they had overcome. For the Baloch tribes in the east, these invasions often pushed them further into their remote, arid homelands, reinforcing their isolation and self-reliance. The foundation of modern Iran can be traced to the rise of the Safavid dynasty in 1501. The Safavids were significant for two main reasons. First, they unified Iran under a single native Iranian rule after centuries of foreign domination. Second, and perhaps more importantly, they declared Shia Islam as the state religion. This decision created a distinct religious identity for Iran, setting it apart from its Sunni Muslim neighbors, particularly the Ottoman Empire to the west and the Mughals to the east. This religious transformation had a deep and lasting impact on Iranian society and politics, shaping the country's identity right up to the present day. The Safavid era was a golden age for Persian art, architecture, and trade. Shah Abbas I, the most famous Safavid ruler, moved the capital to Isfahan and turned it into one of the world's most beautiful cities. Magnificent mosques, palaces, and bridges were built, and the economy thrived on the silk trade. However, the Safavid state was highly centralized, and its efforts to impose religious uniformity created new tensions. In the mountainous regions of Kurdistan, many Kurdish tribes who were predominantly Sunni resisted Safavid control. This led to frequent conflicts and a complex relationship between the Kurdish chieftains and the Safavid shahs, with alliances shifting constantly. After the collapse of the Safavid dynasty in the early 18th century, Iran entered a period of turmoil and civil war. Eventually, the Qajar tribe rose to power in 1789, establishing a new dynasty that would rule until the early 20th century. The Qajar period was a time of great challenge for Iran. The country faced increasing pressure from European imperial powers, namely Russia and Britain, who competed for influence and territory. Iran lost significant lands in the Caucasus to Russia and faced British encroachment from the east. This experience of foreign interference fostered a growing sense of nationalism and a desire for reform among many Iranians. During the Qajar era, the central government's control over the frontier regions remained weak. The great tribal confederations of the Kurds, Lurs, and Baloch often acted as independent powers within their own territories. They collected their own taxes, administered their own justice, and frequently resisted attempts by the central government to assert its authority. The Baloch lands, for instance, were eventually divided between Iran and British India, which is modern-day Pakistan, in the late 19th century, a division that has had lasting consequences for the Baloch people. This period highlighted the persistent gap between the central state and the diverse peoples living on its periphery. The 20th century brought radical changes to Iran. The constitutional revolution of 1906 was a major turning point, introducing the idea of a modern nation-state with a constitution and a parliament. This set the stage for the rise of Reza Shah Pahlavi in 1925. Reza Shah was a modernizer who aimed to build a strong, centralized, and secular state modeled on European nations. He introduced modern education, a national army, and industrial projects. However, his vision of a unified nation was based on Persian language and culture, which often clashed with the identities of Iran's diverse ethnic groups, including the Kurds and the Baloch. Reza Shah's government brutally suppressed tribal autonomy to enforce central control. The traditional power of Kurdish and Baloch chieftains was broken, and their lands were brought under the direct rule of Tehran. The use of minority languages in schools and public life was forbidden as part of a policy of forced assimilation. These policies created deep resentment and fueled the growth of modern Kurdish and Baloch nationalist movements seeking greater cultural and political rights. While the Pahlavi state brought roads and schools to these regions, it also brought a loss of self-governance and cultural expression that had been preserved for centuries. The Pahlavi dynasty was overthrown by the Islamic Revolution in 1979, which established the Islamic Republic of Iran. Initially, many minority groups, including Kurds and Baloch, hoped the revolution would bring them greater autonomy and recognition. However, the new government continued the Pahlavi policy of a strong, centralized state, now framed within a Shia Islamic identity. This was particularly problematic for the largely Sunni Kurdish and Baloch populations. Soon after the revolution, armed conflicts broke out in Kurdistan and Balochistan, as demands for self-rule were met with a forceful military response from the new government in Tehran. Today, the Kurdish and Baloch regions remain areas of strategic importance and recurring unrest. Located along Iran's borders with Iraq, Turkey, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, they are often caught in the crosscurrents of regional geopolitics. These regions face significant economic challenges, social discrimination, and heavy state security presence. The people there continue to struggle for their cultural rights, greater political representation, and a fair share of the country's resources. The long history of these peoples, from ancient empires to the modern state, shows a continuous story of resilience and a persistent desire to maintain their unique identities within the complex mosaic that is Iran.